one of them, I think, is that a lot of international students are concerned about studying in a big city, or that a city environment like Philadelphia would be scary and is dangerous. I meet students from around the world, and some of them are very comfortable in a big city environment, probably because they're studying in a big city now. And whether you're studying in a city in Europe or in the United States, I mean, the city offers a lot of great advantages, but there's also a certain level of street smarts, and you have to have. The way I dispel it is by having students look through our virtual tour on our website, giving them some links to Philadelphia to check out, and also, if possible, to get them to come in with their families and visit the campus. And I think if they talk to other international students that study in the United States and tour the campus that they're interested in, I think that they would find that a concern is not something that they have to worry about anymore.
Going to the U.S., there's people everywhere have guns and are killing other people, and whereas, yes, crime does exist in the United States as it does anywhere else in the world, by and large, U.S. campuses are very safe. Most campuses have a police force on the campus, as well as various security measures to protect students.
A lot of times, when we look at the facilities that are at the majority of institutions in the U.S., there is a sense that looks very playful. And I think that's not the right approach to think about. So one of the myths is, come and everything looks fun and exciting, a bit of Disneyworld almost. And the reality of it is, the facilities and the options and experiences are vast, but at the end of the day, the student is there to gain an education to help him or herself and their community move forward.
Probably some of the myths are have to do with what life might be like in the United States. It's definitely not like what they see in the movies, and maybe what they expect it will be. I think they will find that that people are very friendly and helpful. They will find that they will experience some culture shock, but we have the resources and that to help them work through the culture shock. So I think that students should not be intimidated by coming to the U.S., that there's great opportunity here, and any of those types of issues, there will certainly be people here to help them work through those.
There's one myth that I think that I work at a public university, and I think that a lot of us have heard about the Ivy Leagues in terms of certainly Princeton and Harvard and all the rest. And an Ivy League education is superb and wonderful, and if you can afford it and if you can get into those particular admission areas, great. But there's some wonderful educational outcomes from public universities that sometimes I think the myth is private is better than public. And I do think that both are very good. And I do think that we are really, I would say, we can give you a private education at a very affordable cost with outstanding outcomes.
Well, I think one of the myths that I hear a lot, and because of where my institution is located on the East Coast in a major metropolitan area, I hear myths all the time about the weather, what it's like to be in a large U.S. city. And I think what I would like to dispel, one of the myths I would like to dispel, is that people in the U.S. are really friendly. They're great, even in the big, scary cities, what some people consider to be the big, scary cities. They're great, and they're welcoming to students from overseas and from all over the world. The bigger the city, the more international it is. And I think that international students should realize how open, the entire USA is to bringing them into the country, because they help our educational system as much as we help them learn. So it's really a win-win situation. So, the myth, cities, great places to be. The weather, it's not as extreme as anyone says it is.
There is a conception or a perception, I guess, that United States education is quite expensive and is not affordable and out of reach for many students. So the two-year college system actually helps to dispel that myth by providing outstanding opportunities to cut the cost of the bachelor's degree in half at least. So most two-year community colleges would cost between $5,000 and $7,000 a year, and Foothill and De Anza colleges right now are about $5,300 for a whole year of tuition. And while you're studying there for 2 years, you're completing the same courses of major U.S. universities, particularly those that are on our articulation agreements, for example, UC Berkeley, or even private institutions like University of Southern California, Pepperdine, St. Mary's, for example, or Santa Clara, and you're not paying their tuition for the first 2 years. So when you transfer, you receive course credit, but you saved the difference on the cost.
One of the common myths with students in terms of applying and going through the admission process is their own academic background and how that fits into the U.S. Educational system. And what students don't realize is that we are admission specialists, and we are accustomed to working with students that come from other countries and accustomed to their educational background. Sometimes in most countries, for example, if you studied art in your bachelor degree and you want to go and do an MBA in your country, you may not be able to do that. But in the U.S., that is possible. You can go from one discipline to the other, with some exceptions in professional fields, of course. Also, they come with some myths about the grading system, and that we wouldn't understand their grading system, when in fact we have a number of resources that assist us in that, and we know how the education system works in their respective countries. Other myths have to do with cost or finances, in terms of the affordability or scholarships. The best thing that a student can do in terms of the admission process is to really look for the detailed information, particularly when it comes to finances and scholarships. We get a lot of students that apply for admission when in fact they can also apply for a scholarship that they would qualify for, and they just simply overlook that in the admission process, and they've missed out on an opportunity in the end. So, also with TOEFL scores, and a lot of institutions do offer conditional admission. In fact, for undergraduate admission, you don't even have to have a TOEFL score to get admission. We look purely at the academic, the previous academic study from secondary school.
I think that myth number one will be cost. The institutions are very expensive, and that's one of the biggest myths. So me as an educator trying to demystify that is one of the biggest challenge. I always tell the students, give us a chance. Let's walk together through that application process, and let's wait until see what happens. But let's also apply to a multiple number of institutions, and the right institutions that are the right fit for you. So cost is number one, and I think it all depends. The country, regions are important. So I always tell the students to be willing to try different regions in the United States. Not always the same ones. Even myself from Florida or from New York or from Boston, I say let's look at the Midwest, and I share my experience of going to Iowa and living in Iowa for 8 years, which was tremendous. So telling the student to move forward and diversify their choices is very important.